Hi everybody, Patrick here from Engineering Shock Electronics, engineeringshock.com, and this is the LoRa kit on Kickstarter, and today I'm just going to talk about a couple supplementary items. All the main project videos are done, code samples on the project page. I'm going to do one more video after this for a Bluetooth example with the RoboRemo app. Very easy to do. You're going to love it, but I'm going to talk about a few things here. So on this side right here, we've got a little power header, and it's labeled 5 volts, 3 volts, GD, and GD. 5 volts is a regulated 5 volt line. 3 volts is a regulated 3.3 volt line. GD is ground, and GD is ground. So you can power external circuits if you'd like, but they have to be low power, ideally less than 50 milliamps or less on the 5 volt and 3.3 volt line. If you're powering an external circuit to connect to the LoRa board via level shifter or directly to the 3.3 volt pins, you're going to want to at least connect a ground. You need to share a common ground with any external circuitry, or else they won't be able to communicate. So let me talk a little bit about the level shifter here. So the level shifter, on the left we've got our Heltec GPIO pins, and on the right we've got our external pins. So if we want to shift from 3.3 volts to 5 volts, we need to have our level shifter enabled. So there's a little header here labeled EN/DIS. Select the left and middle pin for enable. And then what we're going to do is for any outputs that we want to, or any connections, this is the 3.3 volt line connected to the Heltec board, and this is the 5 volt side. So if we want to connect, say, GP12, we want to set GP12 as an input. What we would want to do is take a jumper, short the 2 pins on the 3.3 volt header here for GP12. And then we take an external Arduino, connect the ground to the Arduino, connect the output from the Arduino 5 volt line to the 12 header here on the 5 volt header. And that 5 volt signal coming from the Arduino will be translated into a 3.3 volt compatible signal, which is safe for the Heltec board. And then obviously the Heltec GP12 would be set as an input to read that voltage line. Now, what if we had an input on our Arduino, which is 5 volt compatible, and we wanted to use GP13? Doesn't matter, it's 12 or 13 or whatever on here. This is all talked about in the project page, by the way. What we do is we would set GP13 as an output. Make sure that that short is shorting the 2 pins on the 3.3 volt line, which connects it to the level shifter. And then your Arduino could read a 5 volt signal on the 13 header pin on the 5 volt header. So it translates 5 volts incoming to 3.3. And it's bidirectional, so if I have an output, so on this side, it'll change 3.3 into 5.5 volts. Hopefully that makes sense. We've talked about just about everything else in the video here, but there's also the buzzer in the LED. So the buzzer, right here, active 5 volt buzzer. Somebody's at my door, I'm going to pause the video. Sorry about that. Getting back to the buzzer. The buzzer is controlled by either an external circuit or a GP21. There's a little header here called... I'll just zoom in a little bit. It's called 21 buzz enabled. So if I want to enable the buzzer, I place a jumper here. And then what I do is I place another jumper, make sure that my level shifter is turned on, and I short the GP21 2 pins on the 3.3 volt header, and I can set my Heltec GP21 as an output. And every time I set that output high, and I have those 2 headers in place, and the level shifter is enabled, it will drive the buzzer. So again, this is talked about in the project page. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit in more depth. If I want to control it on this side, and I don't want it the pin to go to the 3.3 volt GP21, I can remove the header. I can disable the level shifter. I don't have to. I can leave that enabled or disabled. I'll actually leave it enabled, doesn't matter. And I can put a jumper on the 21 buzz enable line. And then what I can do is I can put 5 volts, an external 5 volts from an external circuit on the 21 pin on, the 5 volt header. I realized I wasn't looking at that until now. I'll just quickly touch on that again. So if I want an external circuit, like an Arduino, to control the buzzer, I'd place the output from the Arduino on the 21 pin here. It's labeled 21 on the 5 volt header. I can enable or disable the level shifter, doesn't really matter. I've removed GP to GP21 header, and I've added my enable header. And so a 5-volt signal on GP21 will drive the buzzer as long as the Heltec board is connected. You'll also need to make sure that your Arduino is connected to, the ground is connected to one of the Heltec ground pins, or the LoRa kit ground pins. Okay, so the LED, a little 2-pin header there. This pin is connected to the LED circuit. This pin is connected to GP23. The little header here is labeled LED_23, so I can use GP23, general purpose IO23, to control that LED by putting by shorting this header, or I can take an external wire, wire connector that's included, connected to this pin, and then connect it to any one of the other output pins on here if I want another pin to drive the LED. So second last, we've talked about this in the videos. It's very difficult to see, but we've got a 6-pin, dual 6-pin header here. These 3 pins are all on the lower side are connected to analog pin 38, and these bottom right pins, these 3 bottom right pins are connected to analog pin 39. I highly suggest going to the project page and at the bottom seeing how this is outlined. You will understand more about how everything works here. You have 3 selections for each analog pin. On the left, we've got light sensor, motion sensor, and microphone. And on GP29, we have the option of light sensor, motion sensor, and select switch over here. You can only select one per each, so you can have one header on one of these 3 and one header on one of these 3. Okay, the battery. So, let me just hold that thought for 1 second. On the inside, under the Heltec unit, if you remove the Heltec unit, there's a little slot for this included header connector. And you don't need to use it, but if you want to add battery function, the Heltec module has a 100 milliamp lithium-ion battery charger option on it, and it can charge at 100 milliamps, but you need to have a compatible battery, otherwise it's dangerous. So a 4.2 volt lithium-ion battery, it will charge it over time as long as power is plugged in. So what happens is, I've got this connected to a header connector, but you'll be having just an empty wire. So what you can do is you can go either solder on the bottom of the board or use your own header connectors. And as you can see right here, there's 4 pins. Very difficult to see the labelings, but this is all in detail on the project page. There's 2 headers with labeled B+ and ground. Both of them are labeled B+. Both headers have a B+ pin, and both have a GD pin for ground. So there's better instructions on the project page for this, but what you'd want to do if you want to use the battery, connect this to the underside here, and have the flying wires come out, solder the red wire to B+, solder the black wire to ground, and then connect your battery to the secondary header, red to B+, and black to ground. Don't reverse any of these things here, or else you might damage the board, and you might very well certainly hurt the battery. And you don't want to mess with lithium-ion batteries if you don't know what you're doing. So if you don't know what you're doing, don't try it. You don't need it; it's an extra option. So what you can do is also add a switch by cutting the battery red wire and adding a switch between the B+ pin and the positive battery pin, and that's it. This is kind of a hurried video. I've covered all of this in the project page. I just kind of wanted to mention it one more time. There's a lot on this board, but there's also a lot to this project. And to those of you who pledged towards the Kickstarter campaign, thank you so much, and I appreciate your patience and me getting these last videos out. Take care of yourselves, and thanks again.